Today I'll be performing an in-depth review of the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. I'll demonstrate the features of these tablets, and I'll make comparisons to the previous generation Cintiq 27 QHD and the smaller Cintiq Pros. That's coming up next. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Aaron Rutten, and on this channel we like to show you the latest gear for digital artists. If this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe to my channel and enable notifications with the bell icon. That way you don't miss any of my new reviews. Today I have my hands on the Wacom Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. Before we dive into the review, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. This video is not sponsored. I was lent these tablets to review by someone who bought them with their own money. Let's not waste any more time and we'll get right into a quick overview of what the Cintiq 24 and 32 can do. The Cintiq Pro is a top-of-the-line display tablet. It's primarily used for drawing, painting, animation, and 3D work, but you could also use it for audio and video production and other creative tasks. The Cintiq Pro supports multi-touch, and it includes a pressure-sensitive pen which you can use to draw directly onto the screen. It can be connected to a desktop or laptop computer, and it supports both Mac and Windows. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 can also be upgraded to an all-in-one computer, but we'll get to that later in the review. Next, I'll move on to the features, but before I do, I want to point out that there are also 13-inch and 16-inch Cintiq Pro models that are kind of lumped together with the 24 and 32, but aside from being smaller, they also have some key differences. While I will make some comparisons to the 16-inch model, this review will be focusing primarily on the features of the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 come with the Wacom Pro Pen 2. This is Wacom's best pen technology to date with over 8,000 pressure levels on the tip and the eraser. The higher pressure levels makes varying your brush width and opacity feel buttery smooth, and it gives you a lot of headroom to set a custom pressure curve. The Pro Pen 2 supports pen tilt, which makes drawing with a digital pencil feel very close to drawing with a real pencil. For example, you can tilt your pencil to shade with the side of it. The Cintiq Pro is also compatible with the Wacom Art Pen, not included, which would allow the Cintiq to be able to sense the rotation of your pen tip in addition to the tilt of your pen. This can be very useful when working with flat brushes and palette knives. An important distinction between Wacom tablets and some of the similar devices out there is that Wacom pens are battery-free, cordless, and do not require charging. Out of all the pens I've tried, Wacoms are the most comfortable even when drawing for hours on end. I tested the Pro Pen 2 in a variety of applications and it works great. I will talk more about the line quality once I get into the screen. Multi-touch is an optional feature that is only available with the touch version of the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. Touch will set you back a bit more, so how useful is touch? In my opinion, it can be useful, but I could also live without it. If you're an illustrator, it does make zooming, panning, and rotating a lot easier and more intuitive. It also makes navigation easier by letting you use two hands to touch multiple buttons in your interface, rather than having to click on one button at a time with a mouse or stylus. This can really speed up your workflow if you do a lot of graphic design, video editing, or audio production. I will mention that touch has a reputation for being a bit buggy. It works in some apps and not in others. Sometimes it may not work at all for a period of time. The issue with touch is that it needs to be supported by the Wacom tablet, the operating system you are using, and the application you are working with. If any one of these components changes, the touch may malfunction. For example, updating your Windows or Mac operating system might result in your touch not working until a new Wacom driver fixes the problem. So it's kind of a gamble whether you'll be able to use the touch if you do get it. I've seen a significant improvement in the reliability of touch in recent years, and in my opinion it's become more stable, but it's still not perfect. I tested multi-touch in a variety of apps, and it works in most of them, though some apps are able to support touch better than others. Now let's discuss the screen. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 feature an etched glass surface which reduces glare and adds a natural feeling of friction when drawing on it. Oddly enough, the surface is not identical on the 24 as it is to the 32. When I draw on the Cintiq Pro 32, the surface feels like it has more friction. It feels grainier and more like paper. The sound the pen makes is lower in pitch and much louder compared to the 24. It sounds a lot like pencil on paper. The surface of the 24 feels smoother to draw on. I'd say it's nearly identical to how it feels to draw on the Cintiq 27 QHD. I have more to say about the differences in the feeling of the screens, but I'll discuss that in the pros and cons near the end of this review. Both the 24 and the 32 have the same amount of friction on my palm. The display resolution of the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 is 4K, or 3840 by 2160 pixels. From what I've heard, the PPI pixel density or the number of pixels in the screen varies between the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32, as well as the Cintiq Pro 16. The Cintiq Pro 16 has the highest pixel density at 275 pixels per inch. The Cintiq Pro 24 has 1/3 less pixel density, and the Cintiq Pro 32 has about 50% less pixel density than the Cintiq Pro 16. In any case, the 4K resolution image will be noticeably sharper on a Cintiq Pro compared to older generations of Cintiqs. The 4K resolution will be especially noticeable when you are zoomed out on an image with a lot of fine detail. This gives you the advantage of being able to draw fine lines while the canvas is at a smaller scale. If you do a lot of pencil shading, stippling, or hatching, you can benefit from a 4K display like this. I should mention that in order to use the Cintiq Pro in 4K resolution, your computer must be able to support that high of a resolution. You'll likely need a good video card with ports that can output video in 4K. That means you'll need DisplayPort, HDMI 2.0, or USB-C that supports both data and video transmission. If your computer does not support any of those display options, you'll still be able to use the Cintiq Pro in a lower resolution of QHD or 1440p. I connected the Cintiq Pro to my computer using DisplayPort and a USB-A cable to achieve 4K resolution. However, if your computer supports USB-C with video, you can connect your Cintiq Pro using a single cable, although that does come at a cost, which I will discuss a bit later in this review. I also think it's very important to mention that there is a difference between a tablet that displays at 4K resolution and a tablet that can support 4K resolution. I've seen some deceptive marketing out there for display tablets that are only in 1080p, saying that they support 4K. Supporting 4K does not mean the screen is in 4K resolution. A screen with only 1920 by 1080 pixels is not going to look as sharp as a screen that is 3840 by 2160 pixels. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 are the real deal when it comes to 4K. Color accuracy is also very important when choosing a display tablet. The Cintiq Pro 24 supports 99% of the Adobe RGB color gamut, and the Cintiq Pro 32 supports 98%. A 1% difference is really not all that significant. The Cintiq Pro also supports up to 10-bit color if your video card does as well. Now let's discuss glare. The Cintiq Pro Surface is excellent at reducing glare. However, the screen is matte, which dulls colors, especially blacks, compared to a glossy screen. Glossy screens are notorious for being slippery to draw on, and they stick to your palm. It's enough to make an artist cringe. The Cintiq Pro's color representation is accurate enough for me, and I prefer the glare reduction and etched glass feel over a glossy screen with richer blacks. The Cintiq Pro screen is primarily for drawing, not color proofing. If you're concerned about color accuracy, you can always do your proofing on a glossy monitor made for photography. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 use an IPS panel, which means that there will not be any color distortion when you press firmly on the screen. The distance between the screen's glass and the sensors has been reduced to further reduce parallax, which means that the brush cursor stays aligned with your pen tip even as you're drawing near the edges of the screen. I also tested the line quality of the Cintiq Pro, and I did not notice any unusual jittering of the line even while using a straight edge. I mention this because jittering lines seems to be an issue people are having with other brands of display tablets. Jittering lines are caused by overly sensitive sensors in the screen and can be compensated for by adding some smoothing to your brush within your drawing application. However, smoothing can also slow down your brush strokes, making it difficult to sketch loosely and draw accurately. It's an advantage to have a tablet that does not produce jittery lines to begin with. Customizing the display is now easier than ever with a new touch button at the top right of the Cintiq Pro that opens the Wacom display settings. You can use the control panel to increase or decrease the brightness, contrast, and gamma. You can also customize the color temperature, color mode, and customize the sharpness of the display. Wacom also offers an optional color calibration tool to help with color management. Overall, the Cintiq Pros are sufficiently bright, with the 24 being a bit brighter than the 32. However, increasing the display brightness creates more heat, which in turn activates the internal fans more often. And boy, oh boy, are those some noisy fans. But I'll complain more about that in a bit. The response rate or latency of the Cintiq Pro 24 is 14 milliseconds, and only 8 milliseconds for the Cintiq Pro 32. Unless you're a fly, 6 milliseconds is probably going to be imperceptible. Now let's move to the exterior of the Cintiq Pro and take a look at some of the ports and external features. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 have several USB ports. There are 4 USB 3.0 ports, 2 on each edge near the top of the display. There are also 2 USB-A ports on the interior of the device. One is designated for the ExpressKey remote dongle, and the other is used to connect the tablet to your computer via USB if you're not connecting with USB-C. There is also one USB-C port on the inside of the Cintiq Pro, This port allows you to transmit both video and data signals to your computer. However, your computer must support USB-C in order to utilize the port. Or in other words, if your computer does not already have a USB-C port, the USB-C port on the Cintiq Pro is useless. Now earlier I said that there was a disadvantage to connecting the Cintiq Pro using USB-C, and that's because according to Wacom, when connected to host computer over USB-C including Cintiq Pro Engine, Cintiq Pro USB 3.0 ports run at USB 2.0 speeds to accommodate 4K video bandwidth over USB-C. So you're actually limiting your USB transfer speed by using USB-C to connect your display rather than DisplayPort or HDMI 2.0. I would recommend not connecting the display through USB-C if you have another option that supports 4K. I chose DisplayPort and it worked great. For those of you who are curious about whether you can connect a Cintiq Pro to a mobile studio via USB-C, yes you can, but the system cannot handle that much data throughput and the screen flickers on and off intermittently. It was especially noticeable when using the touch gestures. There is also a 1/8 inch headphone jack, and on the right edge of the tablet, 2 small microphone holes. The mics are not very good quality, but are sufficient enough for giving voice commands to Cortana. Next is a port I'm happy to see included on the Cintiq Pro, and that is an SD card reader. Since I do a lot of video work, it's nice to have an SD port built right into the side of the display. If you're worried about someone walking into your office and walking out with a 32-inch screen, there's a security slot you can use to physically lock your Cintiq Pro to your desk. Moving to the front side of the display, there are some handy touch buttons at the top right. 2 of the buttons are new. The first button allows you to change the display input. You can toggle between DisplayPort, HDMI, and USB-C. The second button opens the Wacom Desktop Center, which gives you access to pen, touch, and express key settings. The third button pops up the on-screen keyboard, which can be used in place of a physical keyboard. The fourth button is new and opens a control panel that lets you change display settings such as color and brightness. And the fifth button enables and disables multi-touch on the touch version of the Cintiq Pro. On the top edge of the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32, you'll find the power button, and if we flip the device over, there are 2 legs which can fold out to raise the Cintiq Pro from 5 degrees to 20 degrees. You can also lay it flat on a desk. I'll discuss additional mounting options in just a bit. Moving on to the build quality of the device, the Cintiq Pro uses the same high-quality edge-to-edge glass design as the Cintiq 27 QHD. The outer bezel does not have any abrupt edges to interrupt your gestures, and is wide enough to keep your hand from running off the edge of the tablet while allowing room to dock the EK remote on either side. Nothing about this device feels cheap. It's a solid, well-built piece of equipment without a lot of distracting design elements. The backside of the tablet has rubber on the bottom edge to grip your desk, and the feet have rubber as well. One noticeable change from the previous generation Cintiqs is that there are wider mounting holes for the VESA bracket on the back of the device to make it less wobbly when attached to an Ergotron or ErgoFlex arm. The Cintiq 24 and 32 are fairly light for their size. Without the optional stand or engine, the 24 is about 15.4 pounds, and the Cintiq Pro 32 is about 28.8 pounds. Now let's discuss the accessories for the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. We'll start with the accessories that come with the device. Unlike some of the older Cintiqs, the Cintiq Pro does not have any external shortcut buttons built into the display bezel. Instead, Wacom has included a wireless express key remote, which has 17 programmable shortcut buttons and a touch ring that can be customized to perform individual shortcut commands for each app on your computer. The Cintiq Pro EK remote is a slightly darker gray in color, but it works the same as the previous generation remote. The Cintiq Pro pen stand has been overhauled. It's heavier and lies flatter on the desk. This new design makes the pen stand less likely to get knocked over, but the pen is more easily knocked out of the stand. Nevertheless, I like the new stand better. Flip the stand over and there's a nib remover on the bottom. Twist the bottom cover off and you'll reveal 10 replacement nibs nestled inside the stand. 4 of the nibs are felt nibs, which give you additional friction and makes the pen feel more like felt marker on paper. The Pro Pen 2 nibs are smaller than previous generation nibs, so you won't be able to use older style nibs in your Wacom Pro Pen 2. You can, however, use older pens on the Cintiq Pro. My Pro Pen 1 and Art Pen are both supported. And if you have multiple pens like I do, they can be configured independently of each other. And in addition to the pen stand, there's also a pen holder accessory that attaches directly to the Cintiq. The Cintiq Pro comes with all of the cables you'll need to connect the display to your computer. There's a USB to USB cable that's 3 meters long, a DisplayPort to DisplayPort cable which is also 3 meters long, an HDMI 2.0 to HDMI 2.0 cable also 3 meters long, a USB-C to USB cable, which is 1.5 meters, a DisplayPort to mini DisplayPort adapter, a micro USB to USB cable, which is 30 centimeters. This is used to charge the Express Key remote. DVI and VGA cables and adapters are not included. Now for the accessories that can be purchased separately. One of the most common complaints that I've heard is that the Cintiq Pro does not come with a stand. It is difficult to use if you don't have a stand. You can lean over your desk, but that will quickly lead to discomfort. You can also rest the bottom edge of the tablet in your lap or on the arms of your chair, which can be more comfortable, but still not at all ergonomic. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that you do need a stand for this device unless you have a standing desk. It actually works quite well on a standing desk, even at a low angle. So you could look at it like the stand costs extra or the Cintiq Pro is cheaper if you don't need a stand. Either way, someone's going to be disappointed. Another factor is that some people prefer the Ergo stand and some people prefer an arm. Some may even opt for something entirely different. There really is no universal stand that suits everyone, so that's why it's optional. You can choose from the Wacom Ergo stand, which allows the tablet to be angled from vertical to nearly horizontal and supports rotation of the device. This stand is quite heavy and will add a lot of weight to your device and desk. There's also the Wacom Ergo Flex arm, which is basically just an Ergotron arm. This is less rigid than the Ergo stand and supports a wider range of movement, including rotation of the display. It's not as heavy or bulky as the Ergo stand, and I actually prefer it for my workspace. Alternatively, you could also get an optional Wacom VESA mount, which will allow you to attach your own Ergotron arm or VESA-compatible mount. The Cintiq Pro Engine is a computer module that can be inserted into the back of the Cintiq Pro to make it an all-in-one computer. This gives the advantage of portability, but the device will still require AC power. It's also worth mentioning that if you add the engine to the Cintiq Pro while using the Ergo stand, you may have some difficulty accessing all of the ports. So that's it for accessories. Now let's talk about some of the differences in size between the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. Let's start with the size of the 32-inch model. This thing is a beast. It takes up half of my desk, and I have a large desk. It's just a bit wider than my keyboard tray, and if it were any wider, it would be too wide. The aspect ratio is stretched horizontally to match the 4K screen resolution. Some artists hate this and prefer a more square aspect ratio. Personally, I found it hard to utilize all of the horizontal space on the 32, and it doesn't feel much taller than the 24 or the 27. You're only gaining a little more room on the vertical axis. Still, this amount of screen overkill allows for a big horizontal or vertical canvas with plenty of room for palettes off to the sides. And if you're using the Cintiq Pro for more than just illustration, you'll find a wider display is not such a bad thing for video, audio, and design tasks. The 32 requires a lot of gesture space. You really need to move your arm around a lot when navigating. You'll also be moving your head and your eyes a lot. It can get tiring pretty quickly, especially if your app has palettes confined to the outer edges of your UI. It also feels way too big if you have it in your lap, but if you lie it flat on your desk, the top half of the screen feels miles away. Even more so if you have to place your keyboard in front of it. The Cintiq Pro 32 definitely requires a stand or a standing desk. In contrast, the size of the Cintiq Pro 24 feels a little small for someone who is coming from the Cintiq 27 QHD. It feels like I'm running off the canvas near the top and bottom of the display, but that's probably muscle memory that I can adjust to over time. It's really a big jump from the 24 to the 32, and I wish there were a middle ground. 27 inches definitely feels better to me. I think it would be easier to adjust to the 24 as opposed to the 32 if you're coming from a previous generation Cintiq. And of course, there are smaller versions of the Cintiq Pro in 13 and 16 inches, but we're just focusing on the larger models in this review. Here's a 16-inch Cintiq next to the Pro 24 for size comparison. Now let's talk about some of the pros and cons of the devices from my point of view. We'll start with the pros. The Cintiq Pro's 4K screen allows you to see more detail when zoomed out. Even the finest lines in an image are crisp and clear. The Cintiq Pro has less parallax, less glare, and a better range of color than most other display tablets. The Cintiq Pro 32 features a larger screen that can display more palettes and allows for broader gestures. The Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 have a built-in SD card reader. And in my opinion, the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 are the best display tablets on the market. Now we'll talk about some of the cons. The fans in the Cintiq Pro 24 and 32 make it much louder than the Cintiq 27 QHD. The internal fans are at their loudest after the display has been on for a long time with the brightness all the way up. It didn't seem to matter if I had anything on the display. If you set the brightness to under 50%, the fans will come on less often. The fans are located on the top edge of the tablet just above the touch buttons on the front. The fan noise is high-pitched and is very noticeable. If you're laying the Cintiq Pro on your desk using the folding legs, the desk reflects some of the noise, causing it to be louder. If the tablet is mounted to a stand and angled away from the desk, the noise is reduced a bit, but not enough. The fan noise is enough to bother me because I record audio in my studio, but it's also just an unpleasant noise to hear all day. I'll probably need to keep the screen dimmed to under 50% when I want to record, which is unfortunate. My next complaint is that the screen surface is a little noisy on the Cintiq Pro 32, but not on the 24. The pen and eraser are both noticeably louder on the Cintiq Pro 32 screen. The friction also feels different on the Cintiq Pro 32 compared to the 24 and even the 27. It might just be me, but the Pro 32 feels a bit grainier and a bit slicker than the 24, which feels more like the 27 QHD. The next con is touch input, which can be a little bit buggy. For example, it can cause random marks, or touch might go off unexpectedly when you drag your fingers or your palm against the screen. Some of this can be human error, some of this can be the tablet being a bit too sensitive in some applications. To be fair, this is not entirely Wacom's fault, as touch can become unstable because of an operating system update or an update to your applications. Oftentimes, it may be up to the software developer to ensure touch is working in their app. I've mostly tested touch on Windows, so you may have an entirely different experience with touch on Mac. My solution has been to turn off touch in any situation where it's misbehaving using the button on the top of the tablet. Even if it doesn't work in one particular app, touch should work in other apps, and it's reliable enough to use for navigating your computer. Eventually, a driver or software update will fix the problem and touch will be working again. And now for my conclusion. While I'm impressed by the improved screen quality, the 32 feels too big, and the 24 feels too small. Maybe I'm Goldilocks, who knows? I can live with the change in size, but the fan noise is a real buzzkill for me. If it weren't for that, I'd really have nothing to complain about. To be honest, I'm torn between the Pro models and the 27 QHD. In some ways, the 27 suits me fine, but I also like what the Pro models have to offer. I'd have to say it's kind of a draw as to which generation of tablets I prefer. I would say if you want the best quality display tablet available, you should definitely get a Cintiq Pro 24 or 32. If you're on a budget, then consider getting a used or refurbished Cintiq 27 QHD with or without touch. If you already have the Cintiq 27, you'll have to weigh the pros and cons to determine whether the Cintiq Pro is a worthy upgrade. As I mentioned throughout the review, the 27 QHD actually outperforms the Cintiq Pros in certain aspects. That's all for my review of the Wacom Cintiq Pro 24 and 32. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.